Installment of a series on the Gita, in which we're going to cover the first 6 chapters of the Gita over the next 7 days, including today. So the format, the way we'll be doing it every day, will be that we'll meet together and I'll sing Vandana and we'll have some Kirtan, and then I'll introduce the day's topic. And then what we do is we split the groups so that I can talk. It's okay, no problem. So that I can talk to the adults and the youth separately. We're using the meditation room down at the end of the hall. So once I introduce the day's topic, I'll be talking to the youth first. For 30 minutes, I'll give them the day's lesson and they'll take their notes. And during that time, the adults will be watching a speech by the one from whom I learned the philosophy of the Gita, Jagadguru Shri Kripaluji Maharaj. So we'll be watching some basic speeches of Shri Maharajji's, which also includes this philosophy of the Gita. Those speeches are in Hindi with English subtitles. So the adults each day will start after the Kirtan, they'll watch a 30-minute speech while I'm instructing the youth, and then we'll switch. The youth will go into the meditation room and they'll be playing Jeopardy based on what they just learned. So they'll get tested right away on what they just learned. And during that time, then I'll be with the adults and I'll teach them the same topic, but at a little higher level. So today's topic will be the first chapter of the Gita, and the first chapter is basically an introduction to the Gita. Krishna doesn't say anything in the whole first chapter, only Arjuna is talking, but there are still some important things to be learned from the first chapter, and even you can say before the first chapter, meaning what is the Gita, where does the Gita come from, why do we have faith in the Gita, who is qualified to learn the Gita? All of these questions have to be answered before we start hearing Krishna's teachings in the beginning of the second chapter. So this will be the topic for today, an introduction to the Gita itself. So before I go any further, we'll split the groups and I'll ask the adults to, who's going? Shikha's down there? Okay, so head down to the meditation room and you'll watch a wonderful speech that Kripaluji Maharaj gave in Hong Kong in 2007, which is a wonderful basic speech about Hindu philosophy. So thank you very much. And youth, you all come forward, right up. You guys are fine there, but everybody come so you can see the whiteboard. That's good. It's up to her. She can sit. If she's happy to sit, then that's fine. She doesn't have to worry about writing or anything.
Okay. But would you like to sit with the kids? Okay. Just don't run here. Okay? Mama will come back. Yeah, ध्यान से सुनना है. Mama will come back. Mama दूसरी room. Mama दूसरी room. And in the other room.
Okay, you guys. Now, the way this, Rishi, pay attention. The way this is going to work every day is that we have a limited time. We only have 30 minutes while they're watching the video. And we have to cover all the material so that you can take your notes and then you have the knowledge so you can answer the Jeopardy questions. And at the end of the whole week, we'll be having a test also, which is not pass or fail, but it's just to give you some incentive so you learn and you can get a high score on the test at the end. So it means that we have to kind of go through the material quickly so that you can take all the notes that you need to. So, to start with, what is the Gita? Nikki, can you come and write on the board? What is the Gita? So there's another scripture called Ved. Don't write that yet. Ved, have you heard of Vedas?
Yeah.
Have you? Okay, so Ved is a scripture means a book. A book like, you know when you're in school, your teacher gives you a book that you study from?
Yeah.
So we have religious books like that, and the most important one is called Ved. But the most important part of the Vedas, you can say like a chapter in a book, is called Upanishad. So that's the answer to number one, right? Upanishad. U-P-N. N-I-S-H. Do you want a paper to write? Okay. Nikki will bring you one.
So
and a pencil.
What's the first one?
Upanishad.
There's an A, right?
Yeah. Just write it the way she.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Okay. I am saying, you are saying English?
Yes, I'll be talking in English.
मुझे कुछ समझ में आ रहा।
Oh, आपको हिंदी आती है ना?
आपको इंग्लिश आती है कि नहीं?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Okay, so what's the most important, why don't you write, even though I didn't give you a place to write it, why don't you write that other scripture, V-E-D, Ved. Just write it somewhere. Yeah, that's right. Should be capitals. Upanishad also. So, what's the first and most important scripture of Hinduism? Yes? No. Ved. And what's the most important part of the Ved? Upanishad. That's right. Now, number one says Gita is the essence of the Upanishads. Do you know what essence means? Like if you have a lot of something. Let's say we had rose petals. Anyone here ever smell a rose flower? Yeah. Smells good, right? Now what if we brought so many rose petals that it filled this whole room? And then you took the smell out of those, maybe you boiled them or something so you got the smell out, and you made a concentrated, let's say you took the smell from all that many rose petals and you put it in a vial that big. So you made rose perfume. You know, that would be the essence of all of those rose petals. So something like that, you know how many Upanishads there are? More than 1,000. Yeah, so many. But the Gita is the essence of that. It took the most important part of all of that, just like the essence, the rose perfume. So that's why we say Gita is the essence. Gita is just a different type of scripture, a different book. But it has the essence of all those Upanishads just in one little scripture called the Gita. And that's what we're going to study this week. So, number 2. This is about the Gita now. There are 18 chapters in the Gita.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I don't know what writing.
Here, I'll help you.
That's good. And number 3, shlok. A shlok means one, like a sentence. So in the Gita, how many shlokas are there? 700. That's just known. 700 shlokas. Yeah.
And then the next
And the
one?
Gita itself is part of another scripture that you might have heard of. You guys can't talk. You have to pay close attention or else you're going to miss. It's part of a bigger scripture called Mahabharata. Who here has heard of Mahabharata? Okay, the Gita is part of the Mahabharata. So write that for number 4. That's good. Number 5. Do you know who said the Gita? Someone was talking and answering questions. You know? Do you know? No. Yes. Do you know, Nikhil?
I think it's Arjun.
Arjuna wasn't the one who told the Gita. Yes, Krishna told the Gita. He was the one answering the questions. Who was the one asking the questions? Number 6. That was Arjuna. That's right. Do you know who Arjuna is? Do you know?
Do you want to sit up here so I can help you?
Yeah, you can sit closer. Who knows who Arjuna is? You know?
A good archer.
Yes, he was a great archer and a warrior, and he was respected by everybody, and he was also Krishna's friend. And who's Krishna? He's God. Yes. Yes, that's right. Well, how many, I think, do I have that question there? How many brothers? So we'll get to that later. Who else was listening when Krishna told the Gita to Arjuna? Someone was listening from a long way away with his divine hearing. He was somebody's chariot driver, Dhritarashtra's chariot driver. His name starts with S. Who? Sanjay. Sanjay.
Yeah.
That's the answer to number 7. Who else was listening? Sanjay. Who later on actually wrote down what Krishna said. Because when Krishna said it, no one was writing. Later on it got written down. You know? Arjuna didn't write it. In a way, yeah, but who was the one who told Ganapati what to write? Yeah. Ved Vyas. That's the name of the author of Gita. She doesn't know where her mother is. Take her.
Basically, it was Krishna. Is that why to look Ved?
No, Ved Vyas has that name because the Ved used to be all in one, and he made it into 4. And Vyas means to split. So that's how he got that name.
And that's 2 separate words, right?
Yeah.
2 separate words?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's Ved and Vyas. It's a name.
First of all.
Arjuna himself was an eternal or descended, means he came from the divine world, a descended saint. Yeah. He wasn't an ordinary person. So write saint. Saint.
Is everybody happy? Can I erase this?
Are we gonna bring these home?
Yeah, you can if you want. So in the Gita, this book, which is actually pretty small, it's only 700 shlokas, 18 chapters. It's the whole conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, where Arjuna is asking questions and Krishna is answering. And it happened right before a war was going to start. So right before the war started, Arjuna thought, well, I'm not sure if I should fight in this war or not. So he started asking Krishna questions. Like he was confused. But he was only acting confused because a saint can never be confused. A saint means someone who knows God. So if he knows God, how can he be confused about something, right? So number 10 says, why was he acting confused? Do you know?
Because he didn't know if he should fight in the war or not.
No, I'm telling you he knew, but he was acting confused. Yes.
So he could teach a lesson to everyone else.
That's right. So because he asked the same kind of questions that we would have. So you can say he wanted to teach the world. If he hadn't have asked all those questions, Krishna wouldn't have told the Gita. So then how would we know all of that? Now, Arjuna had how many brothers? You know?
4.
Yes, 4 brothers. He was the 5th. And they were called the... You know? Pandavas. That's good. Who were his brothers? Do you know? You know? They were the cousins. What was the name of Arjun's brothers, his 4 brothers? You know? Nakul,
Sahadev, Yudhishthir, and
yeah. They were going to fight against their cousins, somebody just said it, Kauravas. K-A-U. Yeah. Who was the leader of the Kauravas? Yes. Duryodhan. Have you heard of Duryodhan? Just look at how she's spelled. Yeah. And how many brothers did Duryodhan have? Yes. No, Arjun had 4 brothers. Duryodhan had 99 brothers. Including him, there were 100. So in this war, the Pandavas were fighting against the Kauravas. So who were the good guys and who were the bad guys? Do you know, Jessica? You think Arjun was on the good side or the bad side?
Good.
He was on the good side. And Duryodhan was on the bad side. So they were going to fight a war, and there were millions of warriors with each of them on each side. So they all met in a big battlefield, but before they started fighting, Arjun started asking Krishna all of these questions. But number 14 makes an important point. All the people in the Leelas, Leela means any action of God. So Krishna was there, so it means this is part of his action. Any people in the Leelas of Krishna and Ram were saints. Even the bad guys.
We're at number 14 for those of you who just came.
So, does anyone have any questions about that so far? Okay, if you have a question as we're going along, you can ask. Now, what I mean by saints is that, think of it like a movie. When God comes, just hold your pencil still. When God comes on the earth planet, he has an idea that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. We call that Leelas, everything he does. Like whether it's Krishna grazing the cows, that's a Leela. Or Krishna fighting in this big war, that's also a Leela. So sometimes in the Leelas, there have to be some villains, right? Just like in a movie, there's a good guy and there's a bad guy. So in Krishna's Leelas, there's also some bad guys sometimes, like demons, or like Duryodhan, who was fighting against him in the war. But these people who are acting like bad guys, they're not really bad. They're actually saints, Krishna's own people from the divine world who came, but they, just like you're making a movie, someone has to play the part of the bad guy. You understand? So even Duryodhan is not really bad, but he was acting bad so people would understand that don't be like Duryodhan. You understand? Okay. So let's move on to the next part, where we're actually going to start to understand something about what Gita teaches. So there's a verse, in fact the very first verse of the Gita, very first shlok. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta. So the first word is dharma kshetre, and the second word kurukshetre. So kurukshetra was actually the name of the field where they were going to have the big battle. But dharma kshetra, kshetra means, and you can write next to that word, it means field. So dharma kshetra or dharma kshetre means in the field of dharma. It's kind of like a puzzle, but I'll explain it to you. In the field of dharma. You don't have to write that yet. I only told you to write field next to kshetra. So just listen. The field of dharma. Field, you know, right? What is a field? But dharma means like a set of rules that you're supposed to follow. So if you're following them, you're being good. And if you're not following them, you're being bad. That's dharma. And if you follow them, you get rewarded. And you become a good person by following them. That's called dharma. Okay, D-H-A-R-M. So the answer to number one is the whole world is the field of dharma. You can look on the board to know how to spell it.
Actually, just from the top.
So why is it the field of dharma? I'll explain to you with an example from your life. Let's say, do any of you here play soccer? Okay. Now, on the soccer field, there are rules you have to follow, right? And what happens if you break the rules?
You have consequences.
You get penalized, right? You get some kind of penalty, yellow card, red card. Maybe you even get kicked out of the game if you keep breaking the rules. And if you follow the rules, and you might even get a goal, and you might score and win the game. So you get rewarded for following the rules, and you get punished for not following the rules. And who makes sure that you follow the rules, and gives out the punishment or the reward? The referee, right. And where are all those rules kept? Just in the referee's head? Where's it kept? Where's it kept? There's a rule book, right? You ever hear of the rule book? So there's a soccer rule book. So in the rule book, all the rules are there, as well as all the consequences if you break the rule and rewards if you follow the rules. So life has rules. It means that you're supposed to be a good person. Everybody look forward, pay attention. You're supposed to be a good person, not a bad person. So where are all those rules kept? This is the answer to number two. The rules are kept in what's the first and most important scripture of Hinduism? Yes. Yeah, say it. The first answer on the whole. Yes. No. Yeah, what is the name of the rule book in Hinduism? The first and most important scripture of Hinduism. It's the first thing you wrote on the top of this page. You should all have your hand up. What is the first and most important scripture of Hinduism? You wrote it on your page. What is that? Jessica? Say it.
It's the second one that you wrote, not the first one.
No, it's the first one.
Say it. Yes. Babe. So that's the rule book.
That's the answer to two, right?
Yeah. And who, number 3, the one who keeps track of who is following the rules or not, meaning the referee for the whole world, who is that?
God.
God. Turn it over now, number 4. He is sitting right in our... Do you know where God is? Yes. In your room, yes, that's correct, but he's even closer than that. Yes. In your heart. Inside. Heart means like inside you, not literally inside your heart. So he's right there. So it means, you know how, going back to my analogy of playing soccer, if the referee's looking the other way and you trip one of the players on the other team, you won't get a penalty, right? So the ref has to be watching you. But since God is right in here, he not only sees everything you do, he knows everything you think. So even your thoughts count. God is looking, did this person have a good thought or did this person have a bad thought? And God is watching. So in other words, he's like a divine referee who never misses anything. Yes? If you have a bad thought, think of it like a scorecard. God is keeping a scorecard. So on one side, he has all the good things, and on the other side, the bad things. So if we have a bad thought, like let's say you think something bad about someone else, that counts for 1 point on the bad side. Or if you do something bad, again, another point on the bad side. Like you disobey your parents, or someone talks back to their teacher at school, then God would count that on the bad side. Yes?
I have a question. What happens if we do, is there a difference on the scorecard if we do something really bad or something just...
Yes, you could say maybe a really bad action is worth 10 bad points. And a kind of bad action is worth 5 bad points. And a sort of bad action is worth 1 bad point. Like that. Same thing on the good side. A really good action might be worth 10 good points. Not that God actually keeps points, but something like that. And he doesn't have to write it down either. He just knows everything. Yes?
If we get 10 points like on the bad side, we like this, like we can put the table in the bed.
No, it doesn't happen like that immediately. What happens is, it's a good question because he's asking what happens to us if we're being punished for a bad action. So what happens is, because, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow, that you keep getting born again and again. So meaning this isn't your first life. You had another life before, and then when you died, you were reborn in the family that you were born in this life. Does that make sense? So all the good and bad things you did in your last life, you'll be rewarded or punished for that in this life. And the way that you're rewarded is, let's say something good happens to you, like maybe, what's something good that happens to you? I don't know, help me out, give me an example. Win the lottery. Okay, you know why something good like that would happen? It's not luck. It's because you probably helped someone in your last life and you gave a lot of money to help somebody. So that's why you got a lot of money in this life. And then if you did a bad thing, so maybe, let's say someone steals something from you in this life. So you know why you got stolen from? Because maybe you stole something in your last life. Does that make sense, how it works? So the good things you're doing in this life, they'll mean that good things will happen to you in your next life. Yeah. Go ahead.
What happens if we combine everything?
It kind of comes to you one by one, not all combined. It has to come one at a time.
How about
Warnings? You can say the warning comes inside. That when you're about to do something bad, no, listen to what I'm saying. When you're about to do something bad, don't you feel inside that, oh, you know, it's bad and I shouldn't do it, right? Who do you think is giving you that feeling. God is giving you that feeling. That's your warning. And then if you go ahead and you do it anyway, then what can you do? Then you have to get the punishment. Understand? So it's not like God is wants to punish us, but we have to know that if we're going to do bad things, there's going to be some consequence, right? If there's no consequence, then nobody would stop doing bad things. We'd all just do whatever we want. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Okay, so we're up to number 5. This is a technical word that I want you to learn, and you'll probably have to answer this question on the Jeopardy. God does many things, but one of the things He does is what I told you, that He's inside everybody's heart, and He's watching what they do, and then He gives them the reward or punishment. So that form of God, when He does that, it has a particular name. It's called Paramatma. So P-A-R-M-A-T-M-A. Paramatma. Rishi, you can't keep getting up. You sit properly. Can you say that word? Try that one. Paramatma. Paramatma. Can you say it? Paramatma. Try it. Good. You try. Good. You try. Good. Okay. Okay, we basically talked about number 6 already. Rishi, pay attention. He also gives the consequences of our actions in the form of it's actually called destiny. What I told you, that good things happen to you or bad things happen to you, that's called destiny. You all know that word from movies, probably. Oh, you learned it in school too? Okay. Destiny is both good and bad. If something, if I have good luck, that's good destiny. If I have bad luck, like I said, someone stole something from me, that's bad destiny because I did something bad in my past life. Understand? So, this determines the amount of, you can say, pleasure and suffering we have in our next life. So does anyone have any questions about that? Yes?
In the Jeopardy, do we get to take our papers?
In the Jeopardy, you don't get to use your papers. You have to remember it. But you have teams. So the team can talk together and try to decide on what the right answer is.
Does everybody have these?
Yep.
Okay. So we have one last part to finish. Arjun says to Krishna, Nakam che vijayam Krishna nacharajyam sukhani cha. He tells Krishna that I don't want to fight the war just to win and become famous, or because if I win I'll become king. That's not why I want to fight the war. So that's why he was asking, then why should I fight? Why should we have this war? When I don't even care if I become king or not, it's not worth it to me to fight the war. So you can write down the meaning of a couple of those words, and you should remember this because this will be asked on the Jeopardy. Kangche means to desire, when you want something. So he said, Nakangche means I don't want. Vijayam means victory. Rajyam means the kingdom. So the last thing I want you to understand today is why this war was going to happen. You know, war is an awful thing because people fight and then they get killed in the war. So that's why Arjuna decided, you know, why should we have this war? They had all the people on one side, on Duryodhana's side, and then all the people on Arjuna's side, and they were having a disagreement. So to settle that disagreement, they were going to have this big war. So Arjuna said, why should we have this war? But actually, sometimes, like take an example. Let's say there's a police officer. That police officer has to uphold the law. And that means if he sees someone breaking the law, first he can tell him, hey, stop. I'm the police. Don't do that. Let's say the person's hitting another person. So he can tell him to stop. What if he doesn't stop? Then he has to use force, right? Maybe he even has to take his gun out and threaten the person. You stop doing that. That's a crime. You can't do that. So is the police officer allowed to do that? Yeah, in fact, he's supposed to. If he doesn't, he'll get in trouble. If he says, oh no, yeah, this person was doing a crime, but I didn't feel like stopping him, then the police officer will get in trouble. So if that person doesn't listen to him, let's say he's threatening another person, the police officer, sometimes it happens that he even fires his gun on that person. But it's the last resort. He doesn't want to do that, but to save another person's life or to stop the criminal, sometimes the police officer has to do that. So something like that, the people who were on the bad side, who was the leader? Do you remember? Who remembers? Yeah. Duryodhana, that's right. And all of his gang. Now Duryodhana was evil. It means he did bad things to many, many people. And he wasn't even supposed to be the king, but he had made himself king by cheating ways, you can say. So because Arjuna was like a policeman, that was Arjuna's duty, to be like the police officer. So it was his duty to make someone stop being bad, like Duryodhana. So first he tried to discuss with Duryodhana that, no, you guys shouldn't be doing that. He tried to bargain. He tried to, like, if I give you this, then will you stop doing all those bad things? Then he threatened him, just like a police officer, stop or else. Duryodhana still didn't stop. Duryodhana told him, the only way I'll stop doing all of this is if you fight me in a war. So then Arjuna didn't have a choice. He couldn't let him keep doing all the bad things, and he had to stop him, and there was no other way to stop him. He wasn't going to stop unless someone used force to make him stop. So then Arjuna didn't have any choice left. He had to fight in a war and try to defeat Duryodhana. So that's why sometimes the war, meaning like just because Arjuna was going to fight a war doesn't mean Arjuna was bad. Okay? He was on the good side, and the bad people wouldn't stop doing those bad things. So he had to fight against them to make them stop. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so number one, what is Arjuna's duty? To enforce the laws of the society. In this way, Arjuna is like a... Go ahead. Yep. He's just the same as... Yes, the police officer. That's right. What's the answer to number 2? Who wants to read it and give the answer? Rishi?
Does Arjuna want to fight the war for his own benefit? And I say no.
No, he doesn't, because he said, I don't want to be, famous because I won the war, and I don't want to just become king. I don't even care about that. But he's supposed to fight the war anyway, just because it's his duty to stop those bad people. Yes? Yes, go ahead.
Why does he
That's right. Now the last thing, when he was about to start the war, he saw that some of these people who were supporting Duryodhan, who were going to fight on his side, were actually his friends, his cousins, his uncles, even his great-grandfather. They were all helping the bad people. So then he got confused. That's when he said to Krishna, I don't know if I want to fight this war because I'm going to have to fight against these people that I love, that I'm related to. So that's called attachment. When you're attached to someone, then you don't want to hurt them, right? So number 4, why is he confused about doing his duty? Because of his attachment to his relatives. But ask yourself this question. If the police officer sees his brother breaking the law, is he supposed to take that into consideration? He's not, right? He's supposed to enforce the law even if it's his own family member breaking the law. So Arjun was supposed to do his duty even though some of his family were on the wrong side. But he got confused. He started feeling like, just confused because he wanted to, he didn't want to fight against someone that he was attached to. So does anyone have any questions? Shika, can you go and tell them, it looks like the speech is running long. Tell them we'll finish the speech tomorrow, leave that. We'll finish the speech tomorrow and they can come here now. Sounds like bells. So who had their hand up? Who had a question? Someone had, I saw 2 hands up. You have a question?
How do you pronounce it?
Upanishad. Try it. Good. Who else had their hand up? What did you want to ask?
Did he still fight forces fighting numbers even though
He ended up fighting the war.
family members?
What's that?
Did they force his family members?
No, his family members weren't forced. They decided to fight on the other side.
No, but if they broke the law, did he face them?
Oh, you mean, he enforced the law? Is that what you mean? Like he tried to arrest them?
No, I mean, like if they broke the law and then did they face them? So like stuff like that.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I wonder how long it'll go on. So I know some of you came in a little after we got started today. So if you missed anything, maybe you can ask one of your classmates and get the answers from them. Now listen for one second. Everybody listen. Today's Jeopardy is going to be some general questions about God and Hinduism. And this is going to be part of tomorrow's Jeopardy. So you can take this home if you want and study it tonight, and then also what we learn in class tomorrow, that will all be asked in tomorrow's Jeopardy. Today will be some general questions. Yes?
That when you're doing Jeopardy,
Yep.
you use points to answer the question.
So yeah, you do. But we'll let, there's someone who's going to be running the Jeopardy. They'll explain all the rules to you. Go ahead, Shika, you can take it.
They finished their speech just
Oh,
in
it
time.
finished. Okay, good. Now, follow Shika down to the Jeopardy room. You can bring your notebooks and pencils with you. Actually, why don't you put your pencils in the... Yeah, you can bring it with you. Put it inside. Andar dal do. नहीं, इधर आओ, इधर लाओ. ऐसे. ऐसे. इसको मुझे दे दो. ऐसे देखो. अंदर ले जाओ. अपने साथ ले जाओ.
Some bells ring. Church bell. Should we close this thing?
It gets hot. I think.
Yeah. So the sound is complete.
It's okay. We'll manage. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, today is just going to be a general introduction to the Gita and a little bit about the first chapter. But as I said, in the first chapter, Shri Krishna doesn't say anything. So he hasn't started teaching yet. Arjuna is expressing his anxiety and telling all of his doubts to Shri Krishna. But the first chapter is important because it establishes what is the qualification to study the Gita. And along with that, we're going to talk about, first of all, what is the Gita. Gita is probably the most widely known scripture of Sanatana Dharma. It's been translated into many, many languages, and it's available in many languages in many countries in the world. And probably here in America, I would guess that in pretty much any bookstore that you walk into, you would probably find a copy or a translation of the Gita. I don't need a fan on me. I'm comfortable. So the Gita is very popular, for one, because it's very short. It's only 700 shlokas. And because the Sanskrit itself is quite simple, at least compared to Vedas, it's very simple, and it's even more simple than Bhagavad or other Puranas. And it's also the essence of those Vedas. Now, when we talk about the knowledge of Hinduism, knowledge of Sanatana Dharma, what's the origin of that? The origin is Ved. You know, we have many scriptures in Hinduism. Vedas, Upanishads, we have Smritis, we have Upavedas, we have Vedangas, we have Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana, 6 darshan shastras, Purva Mimamsa, Nyaya darshan, Vaisheshik darshan, Yoga darshan, Sankhya darshan, and the Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra, also called Uttar Mimamsa. Then we have 18 Puranas, including the Bhagavatam. So we have many, many scriptures in Hinduism. Mahabharata is 100,000 shlok. Puranas, 400,000 shlokas. Ved, 100,000 mantras. So it's very extensive. Let me tell you a little bit more about the Ved, because Gita is the essence of the Vedas. Ved is the foundation scripture for all of the knowledge of Hinduism. Whatever is said in any other scripture, whether it's Gita, Bhagavad, Ramayana, Mahabharata, any Puran, any Darshan Shastra, none of that is new. It's all coordinated with the Ved. Whatever's in Ved is being re-explained or maybe expanded upon in those other scriptures. So Ved is the thing that everything keeps referring back to. Gita, the knowledge of Gita is based on Ved. Knowledge of Brahma Sutra is based on Ved. Knowledge of Ramayana is based on Ved. And Ved is quite extensive. It's 100,000 mantras. Like one mantra, Ved. Eko deva sarva bhuteshu gudha sarva vyapi sarva bhutantaratma Karmadhyaksha sarvalokadhivasa sakshi cheta kevalo nirgunascha. That's one mantra. So 100,000 of those makes up Veda. And out of all of those, they're actually divided into 4 major sections. We actually call 4 Vedas. So you have Rig Veda, you have Sam Veda, you have Yajur Veda, and you have Atharva Veda. So those 4 Vedas together make up 100,000 mantras. Now they're not all available today, meaning the Veda is not available in total today. But whenever we need, there's enough available for us to get the knowledge we need to live our life and to find God. Out of those Vedas, understand how the Veda is structured. Each Veda has branches. For instance, Rig Veda has 21 shakha, 21 branches, and each branch has chapters. So in that branch, it's broken into different sections, and the last section has the highest knowledge. It's called Upanishad. So Upanishad is not separate from Ved, it's part of Ved. It's at the end of each shakha, at the end of each branch. There's a section which deals with the highest knowledge of what is God, what is soul, what is the path to God, all of that. So that section is called Upanishad. So in fact, each branch of the Ved has its own Upanishad. So originally, there are 1,180 branches of the 4 Vedas. And each branch has its own Upanishad, which means that originally there were 1,180 Upanishads. Nowadays, we have a little more than 200 available. But again, those 200 Upanishads are enough for us to have the correct knowledge. But those Upanishads, for one, are in very difficult Sanskrit and are very difficult to understand. And for 2, again, there are many and they're very extensive. And if you go back to when we had all 1,180 of them at the time of Krishna's appearance, it's a lot for one person to try to study and understand. So Krishna took the essence of all those Upanishads, because the Upanishad is the essence of the Veda. And Krishna took the essence of the Upanishads and put it in the Gita. So it is said that if the Upanishads are cows, Krishna milked those cows. And the milk of the Upanishads is the Gita. So the Gita is the essence of the Vedas. So it's a very concentrated, condensed knowledge. So this is why Gita is both very important and very popular, because it's short, but it has the total philosophy in one small scripture. These Vedas are produced by Krishna himself. He gives the knowledge of Vedas not like in a book form, but as a transfer of knowledge. Meaning in the form of a power, you can say. He gives the knowledge of Ved to Brahma. And Brahma similarly transfers that knowledge into the mind of the first divine rishis of the earth planet. And those rishis passed it on through generations of rishis just by telling it to each other. So that's why it's called Shruti. Veda is also called Shruti, which means you heard it once and you remembered the whole thing. Those rishis, they had such a divine intellect that they could do that. They only need to hear it from their guru one time. Like I sang that one mantra of the Ved. Unless you've memorized it previously, I bet you don't remember it. But imagine hearing 100,000 of those and remembering it all. Just like that. That's how Ved was passed on from Rishi to Rishi, because they had a divine power of intellect. But eventually, when ordinary, general human population became widespread, people like us populated the earth, then that knowledge had to be kept in a book form, which could be accessed and referenced by ordinary people like us. So that's how we have the Ved in book form, although it's not restricted to the book form. Because if the books get destroyed, the knowledge can still be produced. Because that knowledge was never, it was never developed. You know, like scientific knowledge is developed. We do experiments and we discover things. And we make a hypothesis, and then we either prove it right or we prove it wrong. So we have to speculate, and then later we find out that was our speculation correct or not. We make adjustments. The knowledge of the Vedas was never developed like that. It's a complete knowledge in and of itself, and it's passed on from Krishna to Brahma to the rishis of the earth planet, and then eventually it's produced in a book form. So if those books are lost, the knowledge is not lost. Because that knowledge, in fact, is a power of God. Nishvasitamasya vedah vikshitamasya panchabhutani smitametasya characharam suptam chasya mahapralaya. This is a mantra from the Vedas saying that God was sleeping during Mahapralaya, when this whole universe is dissolved. It's called Pralaya, Mahapralaya. So God was sleeping, and He exhaled, and out came Vedas. It means Ved was there in his antahkaran, inside of him, and he just produced it outwardly. That's it. So during Pralaya, Ved comes back inside God, and when he's going to do Srishti, when he's going to manifest the universe, he produces Ved outside of him as well. And eventually, if that knowledge has to be reproduced on the earth planet, an avatar of God himself called Veda Vyas, who is mentioned in our scriptures as being a form of God who descends on earth, he reproduces all the scriptures. So in fact, he comes at the end of every Dwapar Yuga. Dwapar Yuga ended a little more than 5,000 years ago. Actually, in 3102 BC, Dwapar Yuga ended and Kali Yuga began. So just before that, Veda Vyas had come and he rewrote all the Vedas. So he reproduced the whole thing. They existed before then too, but he reproduced it in a book form. At the same time, he wrote Mahabharata with Ganeshji's help. Ganeshji wrote, he dictated. All the Puranas, Bhagavatam. At this time, he also produced Gita. He produced his Brahma Sutra and reproduced all the other Darshan Shastras. So in this way, this knowledge is maintained on the earth planet. It's not like the kind of thing that, oh, the books got lost, so the knowledge got lost. It's a divine, eternal knowledge, and God himself protects that knowledge on the earth planet through his own dissensions and sometimes through the saints and the rishis. So Gita is part of this system of knowledge. But the basis for that system is Ved, and Gita is like an explanatory scripture which further explains what is in Ved, what is in Upanishads. And Gita did also exist before Krishna told it 5,000 years ago. Gita wasn't just produced 5,000 years ago. Gita is also an eternal scripture which is reproduced from time to time. Whenever Krishna comes on earth, he tells Gita. In this whole endless universe, our Ved says, Narayano khila brahmandadhipati rekonsha. There are uncountable Brahmand. Brahmand means a planetary system, an earth planet with the sun and those planets orbiting the sun. That's one Brahmand. There are uncountable such Brahmand in the universe, with souls living there. Not aliens, just souls like us. This universe is endless, and there are unlimited number of souls residing in the universe, so how are they all going to live on one earth planet? So there are arrangements made, just like we can have life here on this earth planet. There are similar arrangements in other Brahman all over this universe. So there are uncountable Brahman, and the souls over there have the same type of questions we have. Meaning, why are we here? Where did we come from? Where did all of this come from? Is there a God? If there is a God, how do we find Him? How can we meet Him? What is the aim of our life? All of those questions are inborn questions. Everybody has them. Nowadays in our universities, you can take a philosophy course where you can discuss about these things. But in fact, the answers are already there in the Ved. That's why Ved is produced. So you don't have to speculate. You want the answer? You can get it from those scriptures. So the same questions are in every soul's heart. And the answers are the same because it's just like a scientific principle. It's the same all over the universe. So the same Vedas and same Gita is there informing those souls on those other earth planets. And they're just reproduced whenever it's required. So Gita is also an eternal scripture of Sanatana Dharma. And the most recent telling of the Gita was when Krishna told Arjuna on the battlefield on Kurukshetra, a little more than 5,000 years ago, in 3139 BC. So does anyone have any questions on the origin of Gita and what is Gita? I'll be stopping periodically as we go to see if anyone has anything they want to ask. And you have this worksheet. You won't be tested at the end of the week like the kids are. Their worksheet is important. They have to study it, and then they'll have a test on the last day. But I provided this for the adults as well, just in case, so it feels more like a class, and if you want to take notes, you can, although it's not required. So I'll just go over some of the points on the worksheet. Number one, Gita is the essence of this scripture, the Upanishads, which is the essence of Veda.
I have a question.
Sure.
So is there any written Vedas, or is it just all kind of passed on from one generation?
No, it's all written.
It is written.
Yeah, Veda Vyas rewrote the whole thing 5,000 years ago. So all 100,000 mantras. Full. Now we have about 20,000 mantras available.
So what happened to the other?
Books get lost, destroyed. Yeah.
So they're lost in the books.
That's right. Doesn't mean the knowledge is gone. Eventually it will be reproduced in its entirety again.
And is it because it's written in ancient Sanskrit and not modern Sanskrit? Or?
No, there's no such thing. Sanskrit never evolved. Sanskrit is the same today as it was 5,000 years ago. Like the Sanskrit written in Gita or Bhagavatam or Valmiki Ramayana is the same Sanskrit that's taught today.
Same as the Vedas.
Same as the Vedas. But the only thing is, just like in English, you can have like a high English, and you can have like a very simple English, and you can have a poetic English. Similarly, you have like very high Sanskrit, and you have very simple Sanskrit, and you have poetic Sanskrit. So the style of Sanskrit in Ved is different than Gita, which is different than Bhagavatam or Puranas, but it doesn't mean it's like an evolution of Sanskrit, it's just a different style of Sanskrit. You're welcome. Any other questions? Say, sorry, I couldn't. what it says in Bhagavatam, Krishna himself is explaining to Uddhav how the Ved came into being. So he says, Ādau Brahmane Prokta. He says in the beginning, because Ved disappears over time, the books are lost, or even during Pralay, the whole thing is wiped out. He says, Ādau, first of all, Brahmane, to Brahma, Prokta. I told Ved to Brahma. And then he passed it on to the rishis. Actually, the first 10 rishis of the earth planet are called Manas Putra of Brahma. They're his own mind-born sons. So he passed on the knowledge of Vedas to them. Now that doesn't mean that there weren't other, of course, from rishi to rishi, it's passed on. So there may be many instances in our scriptures of someone learning Ved from someone else. But it originates from Krishna to Brahma and then to everybody. So just some general facts about the Gita. There's 18 chapters, 700 shlokas. Gita is part of a larger scripture. It's part of Mahabharata. Number 5, who told the Gita means who was the one speaking? That's Krishna. And who was the one asking the questions? That was Arjuna. Who else was listening? That's Sanjay. Remotely, with his divine sense of hearing, he was listening to everything and relating it to Dhritarashtra. Sanjay was Dhritarashtra. He had a chariot driver. So he was the chariot driver of the king, Dhritarashtra. Vedavyas had graced him to get divine eyesight and hearing, so he could see the whole thing happening on Kurukshetra and hear the whole thing, and then he was telling it to Dhritarashtra. So in fact, the Gita, as it's told, you're hearing it through Sanjay. Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra that now Krishna said this, now Arjuna said that. Who wrote the Gita? Vedavyas wrote the Gita. But he wasn't there taking notes at the time. Dhritarashtra didn't take notes, Sanjay didn't take notes, Arjuna didn't take notes. Nobody took notes. Later on, Vedavyas just wrote it down exactly word for word. So if you're wondering how is it possible, because Vedavyas is an avatar of Bhagwan, so it means in one form Krishna was telling the Gita, and in another form as Vedavyas, he wrote the Gita. So no question of any mistake, no chance for any mistake. Now Arjuna is said to be in our scriptures a descension of Narayan. Narayan is in our Puranas, there are actually up to 24 main avatar of Bhagwan described. Like normally you hear of Dashavatar, right? The 10 main dissensions of God. But in Puranas there are another 14 which are also described. Like for instance, Naraji. Naraji is not mentioned in those 10, but in the expanded version, the 24 main avatar of God, Naraji's name comes, Dattatreya comes, Vedavyas comes. So Narayan is one of those 24 dissensions. So they come as, in fact, Arjuna is a dissension of Narayan. So there's no question of Arjuna not having knowledge or him being confused or him not knowing what to do. It's impossible. Then why was he asking all these questions and acting like a confused person? To teach the world. This is the method of revealing scriptures. Just like Tulsi Ramayana. How was that revealed? When Parvati started asking questions of Bhagwan Shankar, and Shankar related the Ramayana to Parvati. So did Parvati have any confusion? No, but she acted confused about who Bhagwan Ram was. That, oh, he's acting like an ordinary man, so how can he be God? Then Shankarji told her the whole Ramayana to remove her confusion. But he even says to her, Tum Raghubir Charan Anuraga Kinhi hu Prashna Jagat Hit Laga. You're asking all these questions for the good of the souls of the world, not because you have any doubt about who Ram is. So similarly, Arjuna is asking questions so that Krishna can reveal the knowledge. It's called Purva Paksh and Uttar Paksh. Purva Paksh means you ask a question or you set forth some kind of dilemma. So Arjuna had a big dilemma. That's the Purva Paksh, and then Krishna gives the Uttar Paksh, which is the teachings of the Gita. But that doesn't mean that you should think of Arjuna like an ordinary person. He was acting like an ordinary person so we could relate to his dilemma, not because he actually was ordinary. In fact, number 11 makes a very important point, that all of the people involved in the Leelas of Ram and Krishna, they're all descended divine personalities. They're all saints. Just like Arjuna was a saint who is acting like an ordinary person. This may shock you, but Duryodhana was not an evil person. He acted evil because that was part of the Leela. Shishupal was not evil. Shishupal was Jay from the divine world. Those of you who have read Bhagavatam, or if you've read Ramayana, you've read the story how Vishnu's two gatekeepers, Jay and Vijay, they got given a curse by some Jnani saints, Sanakadik, that you have to go and be born on the earth planet 3 times as demons. So why did they get that curse? Because Bhagwan was planning to come and he needed some bad guys. He needed someone to play the part of the villain in his Leela. Someone had to be Kans, someone had to be Ravan, someone had to be Shishupal. So who's going to oppose God? No ordinary person can oppose God. Only one of his personal associates could oppose him. So they came as Ravan and Kumbhakarna, Jay and Vijay did. They came as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksh. Hiranyakashipu was Prahlad's father. Hiranyaksh was the one who was killed by Varaha Avatar, the divine boar. And then in Krishna's descension, the same Jay and Vijay came as Shishupal and Dantavakra, another demon king of that time. So one should take the Leelas in that way, that even the ones who are acting as evil personalities, what they're doing is setting an example of bad behavior, that we should be able to recognize, oh, you know what? I'm doing just like Duryodhana did. I shouldn't do that. So they're setting an example of how not to behave. That's why they have these divine personalities acting in this way. But they're all saints. Anyone involved in Bhagwan's Leela is a saint. So now, coming to a little bit of the philosophy of the Gita. The very first verse of the Gita, the first line of the first verse, Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsava. So the first word is Dharma kshetre, which means Dharma kshetra me, Kurukshetra me. So Kurukshetra, we know that's the field where they were going to do battle. So they're there in Kurukshetra. Sanjay is telling, or Dhritarashtra is asking actually, what's happening there in Kurukshetra? What's happening there in Dharma kshetra? So why did he refer to it as Dharma kshetra? Kshetra means field, and Dharma means, in this case, we're going to understand it in this way. A set of rules which, if you follow, you are rewarded, And if you don't, you're punished. And if you follow, you're elevating yourself in a good direction. You're becoming good. And if you don't follow, then you're degrading. You're becoming worse. Your state of mind is becoming worse. And by following dharma, you become good. By not following dharma, you become bad. And if you follow dharma to its ultimate limit, you can attain God. So, dharma kshetra is not only referring to the battlefield. It's in fact referring to the whole world. This whole world is our dharma kshetra. I gave the example to the kids that just like on a soccer field, you have rules, right? There are rules that you have to play the game by. Those rules are kept in a book. That's the soccer rule book. And then there's a referee who knows all the rules, and he has to referee the game. So all the people are playing on the field, and as long as they're playing that game, they're supposed to obey those rules, and then there's the referee enforcing the rules. So for us, the rule book is Veda. And then all the other scriptures are further explaining what's in Veda, like Gita. But the original rule book is the Veda. And we are all the soccer players. The field is the whole field of this entire Earth planet. So it's not like, if you're playing soccer, if you step out of the boundary, you can take a timeout, someone else can play for you. There's no timeouts in our life. No matter where you go, you're on the field of play. And who's the referee? God. God is the referee. So he knows all the rules, whatever's in Veda. He made Veda, so of course he knows it. And when you're playing soccer, you can get away with something because there's only one ref or maybe a couple of referees and they have to watch the whole field. So if they're looking the other way and you trip your opponent, you won't get a penalty. If you get caught, you'll be penalized. But God never misses anything. Our referee in this dharma kshetra is right here. He's sitting inside of our heart. In that form, Bhagavan is known as Paramatma. He's within the soul of every soul, and he knows our each and every thought. So even our thoughts count as karma. So he's distinguishing that is this person's thinking and actions according to the dharma? Is it according to the rules I laid out in the Vedas? If it's not, okay, he's keeping score. You get a tick on the bad side. That's a bad karma. And if it is in accordance with your dharma, then you get a tick on the good side. God is keeping score for each and every soul. And then we receive the consequences of that. Because what's the sense in having rules if there aren't going to be consequences? It means you have to be rewarded for following the rules and punished for not following. Otherwise, what's the use of having rules? So we live in this dharma kshetra. This is the field of dharma. And the dharma is kept in the scriptures and enforced by God and taught by God and his saints through those scriptures. And the whole reason for having that dharma is to elevate a soul. There's two main kinds of dharma. There's physical dharma, because you have a physical body. But you yourself are the soul. So there's a spiritual dharma for your soul and a physical dharma for your body. Normally when people talk about dharma, they're only referring to the physical dharma. That means like, what is your family duty? What is your duty in society? Those kind of things. That's a physical dharma. But what about the dharma for your soul? That dharma is very simple. Love God. Surrender to God is bhakti. So how to come close to God, how to become surrendered to God, that's actually called paradharma, param dharma, the supreme dharma, because it's between your soul and God. So that's very simple and straightforward. And then the apara dharma, it's like a preliminary dharma. That's much more complicated because living in the world is complicated. All the family duties, everything you have to balance and consider in your everyday life, that dharma is more difficult to follow. But if someone follows it, it means they're being a good person. And by following the paradharma, someone can actually attain God, and through that, attain supreme divine bliss. And by following the aparadharma, what happens is we get a good destiny for our next life. Because you are a good person, so good things will happen to you in your next life. And if you didn't follow dharma, then there will be some punishment, some kind of loss or suffering in the next life because of that. It's called destiny. Purva janma kritam karma tad bhagyamiti kathyate. All of your karma from your previous life fructifies as your bhagya, or your destiny, in this life. And everything you're doing in this life will fructify in your future incarnations. But if someone attains God, then the question of dharma is finished forever. Because dharma is to take you to God. Once you attain God, you don't need dharma anymore. You become like God. You become unlimitedly knowledgeable and blissful, just like God. So dharma is meant to take you to God, ultimately. And it is also meant to regulate our behavior in the world, so that as long as we're living in the world, we're good. So those are the two kinds of dharma. And this is our dharma kshetra. And that idea is introduced by the very first word of the first shlok of the Gita, with this term, dharma kshetra. So does anyone have a question about that before I conclude today's topic?
But can we say that even for our physical world, we do have a very simple rule to do that being do unto others as you want them to do unto you. That explains it, and then there's no problem.
That's very simple, yes. Where it gets more complicated is where, let's say, there's a wife, and let's say her husband tells her to do something. So it's her duty to do that thing. But let's say her husband's mother, who's also living in the same house, also says, just after the husband said something, oh, do this thing for me. Then who should she do, what thing should she do first? That's where you get like a dharma sankat. So it becomes, that kind of thing becomes complicated. The details become complicated. But in essence, what you said is right, that do unto others as you would wish them to do to you. That's, if you just follow that, you pretty much can't go wrong.
But can we say that even that complicated situation, I guess if she puts herself in the shoes of her husband and the shoes of her mother, and say, okay, if I were the mother, what will I do? If I were the husband, what will I do? And that will resolve perhaps in her own mind.
So see what I'm saying though? You had to go through all that thought process. Whereas paradharma is very simple. You just attach your mind to God. You think of His form, you think of His leelas. Basically not many rules or regulations. Just remember Him. That's it. So I'll just quickly relate to you about Arjun's dilemma, how we should understand that, and how it's going to, how we're going to address it going forward, or how Krishna addressed it. Arjun's dilemma can be understood in very simple terms. Arjuna had a duty to enforce the laws of the society, or to enforce the laws of dharma, because as a kshatriya, that is his duty. Now, you can compare that to a modern day police officer, that a police officer has to uphold the laws of the society. And in order to do that, he has different levels of force that he can use. He can verbally tell someone who's breaking the law, stop. If that person doesn't listen and they're threatening someone else in some way, then he can use some force to make that person stop. In certain extreme cases, he may have to use deadly force to make that person stop. So there's like a sequence, there's a kram. But the police officer is allowed, he's justified in using force or even using deadly force if the situation requires it. Similarly, Arjun had a duty to uphold the laws, and Duryodhan and all the others, Nikhil, don't talk. Duryodhan and his gang were evil, there's no doubt. They were performing many evil actions, and it was Arjun's duty to stop them. He couldn't just let them go on. Berok, tok, do whatever you want. It was his duty, just like it's a police officer's duty. The police officer can't say, karne do, who cares? Arjun couldn't do that. He had to enforce the laws. And they tried all the other options first. He tried discussing. Pandavas and Kauravas discussed. That didn't come to any resolution. He tried, you can say, bargaining or even, bribing. Then why don't you, you take everything. Just give us these 5 villages. That didn't work. They tried threatening. That didn't work. In the end, what was left to do? Duryodhan told him, you have to fight the war. Even Krishna went as a messenger of peace.